Okay, and we're live.
All right, cool. Hi, guys.
Good afternoon.
So, as you know, I've been working a lot on the React Native SDK. And as part of that, I've been putting together this boilerplate app. And my goal with this app is to kind of give a basic overview of running a Textile node in your mobile application, and then how to do some basic IPFS interactions with the Textile APIs. And so today I just was thinking it could be cool to walk you through building an app, building a single app, just that, pulls in Textile, fires up the node, and maybe does one or two basic things. What do you guys think?
Sounds awesome.
Cool. All right, so why don't I share my screen if that works? All right, how's that look?
Yep, I can see it. Looking good.
Okay, so I've got a little, I've got a very empty React Native single screen app here. Doesn't really do anything. It's in TypeScript in case anybody ends up watching this and wondering about some of the types and things. So, and then I'm gonna just run the iOS version of this app with Xcode. And here I've just hidden everything and just have kind of a just the log so we can play around with it. And then so I can ignore a lot of the React Native log outputs. I'm just going to filter to things called things that say demo. And so, okay, so here's my little basic app, and I put some placeholders in here so that we can build from it. You can see I can click this on a button, and it will let us know that the button was clicked. So, okay. So a little bit about using the Textile library. First thing that I'll show you is how the dependencies are right now. So I'm just pulling the React Native SDK from my local library. Anybody else that was using this would be pulling it from one of the modules on NPM, but I'm still actively developing, so that's just in my folders here. The SDK has a few peer dependencies, and the reason I was making them peer dependencies was so that I didn't have to install them in the SDK, and then I didn't run into version conflicts with people's wrapping applications. I'm not very sophisticated here, so so basically this entire block is from peer dependencies. So they're things that the SDK is going to use, but it's going to rely on the app having it installed in their own dependencies. So that's what I've done here in this app. And that's all documented in the SDK repo, so that's pretty easy. So once you have the SDK installed, so I've already done my NPM install here, so it's good to go. The import is pretty basic, so we can import Textile from the namespace SDK. And yeah, you guys can jump in if you have any questions too, feel free. So, okay, so the way that the class works is it's already initialized, so you could already be doing things with it. But I'm gonna just throw it into my app here so that there's a little bit of integration. So I'm just gonna make a reference to it here. Just to keep it straight. This is what we have a lot in our mobile app. We have a reference to it because we're using Redux and a lot of other things. So just very familiar this way. Okay, so we haven't done anything. When you have this instance of Textile, it's not really wired up to do much. And so the way that Textile runs is it actually requires a bit of state management to know how the node, to know what state the node is in order to handle things like startup and shutdown, and then passing along different events that are happening. And so every app that uses it actually just needs to run a setup step on an instance of it, and that instance needs to be managed someplace in kind of the root state management of the. during its mounting step, this setup. And so what you do is you just run setup. So let's see. So what's
that? Andrew, does that like initialize the textile node, or?
So yeah, because there's a couple things that because we're going React Native first with the SDK, and the native SDKs are not complete yet. There's some things that we need to handle here. So when you run the setup, it does actually a lot of just event listener wiring. So
Okay.
so it can hang on to things like the node state. And that's why you could use the Textile class from any place in your app, but you have to have this one that's set up, and this one that's set up is going to have all the listeners to handle all the management of what's going to fire to it. Those other ones that you're going to use elsewhere in your app don't really care about that stuff. So this just gets that set up.
Cool.
Likewise, because in that setup step, it's creating a bunch of internal listeners for native events. You also just want to get rid of those if there's a teardown or if there's an unmount event. So this is all in the README also, I'm pretty sure. And so actually I can show you a bit of that. I've gone ahead and kind of namespaced the events. So there's some internal events that aren't meant for the app, the client app, to ever consume. And then there's a bunch that I'm going to be documenting that they can consume, that when they receive those events, they can change behaviors of the behavior of their app, just like we do in Textile photos. And so I'll show you an example of that. So after we've set up the Textile instance, I can throw this event listener. And so this is using the device event emitter, and device event emitter just essentially lets us send from JavaScript to JavaScript an event. Yeah. And so let's see. So, okay, so what's going to happen is anytime that there's a new node created, this event would fire, and we'll be able to look at the log of that new node, new node state. We'll be able to look at the log of the new node state, and I'm just going to set a state of the node state. So and I got to do that here too. Oops, sorry, that's actually the one I need here. What is the first one? It's unknown, right? Okay, so the node is going to be, the node state's unknown, and our app is going to be sitting here waiting to hear back from a new node state. I think if we refresh it now, nothing's actually going to happen. Oh, no, never mind. It's already getting a ton. Okay, that's right. So when you run setup, it's going to create those listeners, and the first thing it's going to also try to do is initialize your node. And so you see we got a bunch of different updates about the new node states that were happening, and the final one being the node started. So that's pretty. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Like 4 lines of code, and we have Textile running in our app. So let's see. So that would be. Okay, so we can start to play around with some other things here.
Does the Textile instance, does that have all the API methods on it?
Yeah, so I just was pushing a change to that. So basically what I did is I took the exact same API that we used to have in the mobile app, and I kind of namespaced it inside of my Textile instance, and this is what I've just changed. So previously you could go something like, you could go something like API.createThread.
Yeah.
But I just actually I just changed this like an hour ago. So my new Textile instance is actually just an extension of the old API. So now you just do stuff like this. But that's funny because it doesn't seem to want to be that. This is, oh yeah, okay, we just don't call it create thread anymore.
Oh yeah, it's like add thread.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so you can see it's all still there. But what I've done is I've added a bunch of stuff that we have in React Native currently, and we can move it to the native layer later. But things like the startup and shutdown sequences and other stuff like that. But yeah, so it's all there. So yeah, we can actually use that now. Just very basically, I have this button that I was pressing.
Just kind of occurred to me, like, seeing how nicely it's coming together.
What's that?
It occurred to me, seeing how nicely it's coming together, that it seems like it'll solve problems that aren't necessarily even related to IPFS. You know,
oh,
it's like,
Sander, you cut out for that whole time for me.
Oh shoot! How about now?
Yeah, you're better now.
Okay. I was just saying, like, watching it and seeing how nice it's coming together, it seems like it'll solve problems that are kind of even outside of the scope of like IPFS related applications, you know, like once there's the stuff in the native layers around like handling background uploads, you'll have this like simple object that you can just say add file and then just walk away.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like really complicated on mobile because all this stuff that has to happen, but it just happens to also be going to IPFS.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be pretty cool. Pretty darn cool. So yeah, the next thing, so here, I think this will work. I'm just guessing that this is the right way to call it, but we just, let me just clear this. So we now, whenever I refresh my app, we get back to this new node state of started, which is great. So now if I click the button, it hates it. This node state is not
live. So you know it's a real live demo.
Sorry. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm hitting a little. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So cool. So yeah, if I click that now, we just toggle on and off our Textile instance. Pretty nice. So the next thing we could do, and this gets a little bit trickier because of the way that threads and schemas are currently. So threads and schemas are a little bit tailored to the Textile Photos app, but that it should be a pretty quick fix over the next week or two. But we can play with creating a thread perhaps. So let me see here if I have a nice little button I've already done. Yeah.
So Andrew, just a point of clarification while you do that. So for the folks watching at home, when you're starting and stopping the Textile node like that, you're also starting and stopping a IPFS peer in the background as well, right?
Totally. Yeah, so basically without any of the other like frills of the Textile layer, you essentially just get a really easy to use IPFS node here. And I think that will work over the next weeks as well to just kind of expose some more of the raw IPFS mechanisms through the little wrapper API, so that people that just want to use straight IPFS, this will be a really easy way to do it.
Almost seems like you could have just like a IPFS like namespace on the Textile object where you could just call out to sort of raw IPFS tools, or at least wrappers around some of them maybe.
Totally. So, okay, so we can do, so I wrote this the other day in playing around with that boilerplate app. So the way that you create a thread in Textile, so if anybody watches and they don't know what a thread is, two ideas would be, we have a bunch of writing on our blog about what threads are, or also you can jump on our Slack channel and poke around and ask questions. But a thread is just the way that that data is shared and stored in Textile at a that's like the very basic explanation of it. And so anytime you want to be pinning data into the IPFS node, it's really helpful if you actually just create a thread first to pin that data. And so, all right, so when in our API, when you want to create a thread, you want to hand it this key. In Textile Photos, we're using a nice UUID library. I'm just using a little fake UUID function. It's not truly random, safe, or anything like that. So probably not good for production, but good enough for the demo. So what I do is I just create this little unique key and use that as my thread key. I also was naming it by the number of threads that I had already, but we're just gonna get rid of that for now.
We could maybe just tell people that that key is not, it's not like a cryptographic key or anything. It's just that's created automatically.
Say that again.
That key that you're talking about is just pointing out that it's not a cryptographic key.
So it's okay if it's not. It's like it's not critical that it's totally unique or anything.
Well, if it's not unique, you'll get an error back from the framework, but it's just unique to your local node.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, so this works. Okay, so now I have this little create thread function. So and what it's going to do is create this local key then, and I'm going to name it thread1. It's an asynchronous function. So here I'm just going to use the promise here and wait for it to return, and then I'm going to console log the ID of that thread. So so instead of hitting this old button function up here, let's hit the new create thread function. And there it is. We got our thread.
Cool.
Okay, and then in the boilerplate, I go further and I start pinning files to the thread. And so I have two buttons in the demo. In the boilerplate, one that you can just keep creating threads, and then the second one will just keep pinning a file to the first thread that you create, just to give developers like a look at how that's happening. But yeah, you can see it's like super easy now to run Textile and have it do things. So it's pretty cool.
Super cool.
Really good work.
And that's the wrap on my demo.
Very nice demo.
Andrew, how long, because you started working on this like just a week and a half ago or something, right? A couple weeks ago?
Yeah, probably like 2 weeks plus, but like not, I haven't been able to obviously do full time on it. So
yeah,
I'd say it didn't take much.
Yeah.
A big part of it was really just like kind of carefully pulling apart the mobile application, because the way that we're using Redux for state management there, it works. Like Redux seems super powerful when you have a lot of different views that are like constantly moving and have to you have to change which state is being used to display in that view and everything. But when you're like thinking about an API like this, you just want something like super flat and like that you can just use like in a very straightforward way. But so when I started kind of pulling it out, each time you'd pull like one piece of the Textile management logic out, it sort of had a lot of connections to different parts of the app. So like just kind of like slowly cutting those wires and making it work was most of the work, was like most of the effort. If it wasn't for that, it probably like would have been really fast to put this together.
Nice. Very cool. It's exciting.
Yeah. So next time we have the Textile image helper, and what I'd like to do is I left the Textile image. So if anybody does watch this, the Textile image helper is essentially giving a native image, creating a custom native image view that renders data directly from content addressable data. So you give it you give it a hash, and it will render an image in a native class. And so it's called the Textile image. And so with this demo, you can actually use that to take a hash that you add to a thread here, or you can request a hash from your IPFS instance here, and then render it directly as an image that will render in the view. And so I think probably a really cool demo in a week or two would be to pull that then out of the app and have a library where you can pull Textile image into this, and I can show people how to start rendering images from IPFS. And that's cool because it's the way that Textile works is those images could be like wide open, or you could support encrypted images. So that's pretty dope.
Very cool.
Cool, guys. Is that it?
That's it. There you go. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah, have a good one.
Cool. See you guys.